Rural Enterprises is reshaping urban real estate, from mixed-use housing to office, retail, hospitality, and industrial projects, while delivering strong returns and lasting community benefits. With over $100 million in affordable housing completed and more than $1 billion in development underway, they're leading with data-driven strategies and smart partnerships. Discover how they combine asset management, capital investment, and advisory services to transform cities sustainably at ruralenterprises.com.
On this episode of Create the Village,
we want to create an ecosystem of legacy builders, and we are all we're solving for today and tomorrow.
This is Create the Village, a podcast about the intersection of public policy and community development.
My name is 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝘁. I'm the CEO and founder of the Integral Group, a real estate company that focuses on creating value in cities and rebuilding the fabric of communities. There is no doubt that representation matters. But representation without infrastructure really leads to lasting change. In the world of real estate and economic development, we often focus on getting more Black professionals into the room. But once they're there, do they have access to the networks, resources, and deal flow required to build real power? That's the mission behind BRIC, the Black Real Estate Investment Council. In today's episode, Kareem Brantley, president of Integral Florida, is joined by two leaders helping to shape the future of equitable development in South Florida and beyond. Kenasha Paul, founder and CEO of the Black Professionals Network, and Chad Musgrove, vice president at M&T Bank, are helping to build a platform rooted in connection, where developers, lenders, investors, and aspiring professionals can come together to collaborate, learn, and grow. Together, they explore the story behind BRIC, the importance of aligned values in capital partnerships, and why building generational wealth through real estate requires not just opportunity, but intention, education, and community. So let's listen in after this message from our sponsors.
Art isn't just decoration, it's how we tell stories, honor history, and build community. 𝗏𝗏𝗻𝗏, the African Diaspora Art Museum of Atlanta, is creating a space where culture isn't added later, it's built in from the start. From exhibitions to public programs, 𝗏𝗏𝗻𝗏 is shaping a more connected, creative Atlanta. Visit 𝗏𝗏𝗻𝗏arts.org to see what's taking shape.
In undercapitalized neighborhoods, social risk often becomes financial risk. The 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Project makes investments in challenging neighborhoods more stable and predictable by embedding proven, place-based programs into housing and community developments. From workforce readiness to youth mentorship, TAP builds trust, stability, and long-term value in the communities where you invest. Learn how to get involved and integrate this model into your next project at theascentproject.org.
Well, welcome to Create the Village. I'm Kareem Brantley, and I get to host today and shine a spotlight on two visionary leaders who are transforming the professional landscape for Black professionals in South Florida and beyond. Our guests today are Kenasha Paul of BPN and Chad Musgrove of M&T Bank. The former is a dynamic founder and CEO of the Black Professionals Network, and Chad, again, is the vice president at M&T Bank with years of experience in the lending environment, especially multifamily housing. So in today's episode, we'll explore Kenasha's journey, Chad's journey, and the inspiration behind BPN and BRIC, and how both of them are shaping a more equitable professional ecosystem in the areas that they live in, expanding their business. We'll also have a chance to talk to both Chad and Kenasha about their insights on navigating challenges, building authentic connections, and unlocking the power of a collective mission. So whether you're looking to find inspiration, amplify your professional impact, or learn how to foster community in your own circles, you won't want to miss this conversation. So, Kenasha, Chad, welcome to Create the Village, and so happy that you're here to join me today and have a conversation about what we're doing with BRIC in South Florida. But before I go any further, Kenasha, let me just introduce you and maybe talk a little bit about BPN and what inspired you to create BPN, and then we'll bring in Chad, and then we'll come back and talk about BRIC. But take it away.
No, thank you so much, Kareem, for having me on. To answer your question, it honestly sparked from seeing groups that didn't look like me and how they were able to navigate their professional journey. When I was in law school, I think some of the students didn't realize how easily it was for them to call up a parent or call up someone in that they knew who could get them a clerkship, who could get them a job opportunity. Like a lot of, especially towards my second year, you had to kind of go out and get opportunities. And I was first generation in my family to even go to law school, right? So it's like, so for me, I was like, they were just like, oh, but then you could go to this board. But the students, they were bypassing the board. They were emailing, calling people up. And I was like, that's insane. Like, why is it that we don't have that kind of system? And I know that in law they did, but when I was my friends, were in other professions. I saw they were having the same issue in med school. They were having the same issue in finance. They were having the issue in real estate. And I was just like, so this is problem just is definitely something, because as Black professionals, everyone thinks that we know we all know each other when you get to a certain status, but we don't. And I was like, you know what? There is beauty in for us to be able to be one call away from an introduction and one call away from an opportunity, and that it is important for us to leverage those networks. Everyone knows like the old adage is not like it's not what you know, but who you know. But unfortunately for me, I thought it was both. Like I was like, you needed the what, you needed the who, you needed the means. So I wanted to make sure that as a community we got it all. And so that was like, for me, I was on that journey. I was like, okay, I want us to have an opportunity for us to get the who, what, and the means to be able to create opportunities, so that when my kids, when they decide if they want to go to law school, med school, wherever they want to do, they can be someone in my network. I can call them. It's like, oh, I know a person who works at the firm. They can let you sit at the front desk. I want that.
That's awesome, because that's one of the big challenges of real estate development, in particular a field that I'm in, and then Chad is tangentially affiliated with it because he provides the capital to the developments that we build. But Chad, as you have come into the industry, obviously specializing in multifamily, if you could just talk a little bit about your background and then why you got involved with BRIC, and even maybe talk about the connection between BRIC and BPN, and why this has become such an important item for you. And you might want to introduce BRIC, since I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, no worries. Kareem, and first and foremost, thank you for having me and the team. And always great to sit next to Kenasha and just, sit in her sunlight. Look, yeah, I'll give you, the quick background on me. Listen, born in Mississippi, grew up on a dirt road, a little small town called Pasquerton, went to school in New York, ended up studying at Columbia, and was graduating, arguably around the worst time in history. It was class of 2008. It was, the GFC had just happened, and people were really trying to figure out what they were going to do. And, I always knew I wanted to be in the real estate space, but kind of to Kenasha's point, which is why I wanted to start with this background, was that I had no idea of, one, how vast the real estate space was, right? Kareem, kind of what you talked about with development and, where I sit with institutional finance, really all I knew was, hey, there's that, Coldwell Banker sign growing up on the street, and I could drive by and let me call and, maybe try to see what that agent is saying. So for me, really, it was, how do I find myself in this space? How can I be successful in it? And when I started my career, there were not a lot of professionals that looked like me. And so, I had a great mentor who told me, one, that doesn't matter. And I'm thinking in my head, like, it really does. But I say that because he really wholeheartedly believed that, if you work hard, I'll teach you everything I can teach you, you'll be successful in this business. And thankfully, he was right. And he actually gave me the opportunity to leave New York, where I was working at the firm at that time, and help open an office in Miami, which we did. And so as time progressed, one of the things that I was missing from New York was the ability to get on the phone and, phone 3 or 4 friends. They phone 3 or 4 friends. And next thing you know, we have, 15, 20 people who look like us, and we just show up, maybe to go have a beverage or a cocktail at the local establishment, but really to, foster that collaboration, that camaraderie, and just being able to just relax and have a good time. And so BRIC, or the Black Real Estate Investment Council, really was spun out of that. It was that desire to have Black professionals, basically have a resource, an educational tool, a networking tool, a programming tool, where they can really be exposed to some of the opportunities that we know exists. And when I say we, I'm kind of speaking specifically about us on this podcast, that we know exists, but some others, depending on where they are, either at the point of their career or just the outlets that they receive, they may not know. I had no idea what a mortgage-backed security was, and that I was going to have some formal real estate training on Wall Street, but I had the opportunity because I had the right network. And so when I met Kenasha, again, just how much she radiates and how passionate she is about what she does, I saw an opportunity where, one, she's been successful in this space. I think, Kareem, you can probably agree to this, that in our business, we know what we're good at, and we want to do that one thing. And I was like, hey, Kenasha, I'm going to be very humble. I know what I'm good at. I actually am good at networking, but the organization and putting this all together, that's not my strong suit. And, you've done an amazing job in building this amazing platform with such reach that's only going to grow. And quite frankly, I was like, hey, we would just love to, put our hitch on your wagon and go along for the ride, and hope that we can add value as best we can.
And let me say this, Chad, as we were contemplating this idea of BRIC, I think Evans Gideon, who's not on with us, was a part of this too. And in separate conversations between you and I, and then you and Evans, I remember we were in Brickell in Miami, and my office was right across the street from wherever we were at that hotel restaurant bar. And we started talking about this, and this is long before I knew Kenasha. And you said to me, yeah, I think I want to do this. And I remember I kept saying to myself, well, I don't know when I'm going to ever have the time to do this, but you go up for it, Chad. I think you'd be the right person because your passion spoke to it. And then I got a chance to meet Kenasha, and I said to you, do you remember what I said to you about the infrastructure? Because you kind of dovetailed in it. I'll just say it. It was like, hey, you know what? I'll do it only if we can ride on the infrastructure of BPN, because that would alleviate the whole, doing everything from scratch and all of that. And like you said, GFC, which you were talking about, the Great Recession, people need to be able to fall back on community and infrastructure when it comes to the ups and downs of the marketplace. And aside from just having a general connection, at those points in time, it's really, really critical that you have the right network to bounce back and be able to, move and make sure you're headed in the right direction. But with that said, Kenasha, BPN, talk about why BRIC makes sense for BPN and what you expect to get out of it. I think it's not just about real estate. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about what it really is about in the background as well.
Well, I think for me, it came from what I said earlier. Like, we need the who, what, and the means. And I feel like, real estate provides the opportunity for us to, especially the synergy, what made BRIC and BPN coming together is that we understand there's an ecosystem of commercial real estate professionals, from development, broker, banking, like the list goes on. However, once they I feel like what's so fascinating about real estate, they're creating a physical marketplace, right? They need tenants, or they need investors. They need people who are going to be like foot traffic in that whatever they're deciding to build. And then for the network, I was like, well, my network, they need opportunities. They need also deal flow. The same way commercial real estate professionals, they need deal flow. Our professionals need to understand that there is investment opportunities that they can add to their wealth portfolio. And so I felt like it was a natural, like symbiotic relationship for us to come together, where it's like we can nurture both sides of the marketplace when it comes to commercial real estate, provide them people that they could tap in for potential private equity funding, especially as we're nurturing our professionals. Like part of our mission is for at least by 2050, we get at least 1 million Black professionals to be accredited investors. So it's a very aggressive goal, but we know that with we can get at least that threshold, at least even 10% of it, the economic impact that would create. And so we know that for me, it was always about that we do need to prioritize, economic opportunities, and we need to make sure that the legacy that we're all trying to create is that it's seed funded, and you need that funding in order to do it. So for me, it was like when when Chad and Evans came, they're just like, look, we don't know what we're doing. It's just like we have people, we got this WhatsApp group, they got like a couple hundred people in there. Like it's been around for a while. We like did a couple things here and there. And then I was just like, okay. So tall order. Cause it's like when you think about BRIC, that's like creating another BPN on top of it. So it's like creating a whole separate org. But I think people are excited to see the merge because it gives them, it also just feeds into our mission. Also, is like, together each achieves more. It shows them the collaboration, it shows them the teamwork, and it shows us being strategic about community. So I think that's, for me, I felt like it made sense. It was a great alignment.
And Kenasha, just you said a couple things that made me start to think about leadership and things like that. And I'm big on that. I mean, that's one of my things. I don't know if I've certainly been great at it all the time. I'm still learning always. But talk about your leadership journey, because I mean, I don't think that folks really understand back from how do you become this servant leader. Your email, it says, in service and things like that, because this really goes back to FIU and college, right? So just kind of talk about that, because I look at both of you as leaders, but I just want to take a small deviation off track just to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, no, honestly, I feel like it goes from even my upbringing. So a lot of people don't know my father. He just turned 80. He's a pastor. So I grew up in the church, but I always grew up in service, and the fact, and I appreciated the way that my father introduced me to like, religion in a way that I think that allowed me to deviate from the typical like PK stereotypes, in the sense that it was very much my choice, and it was very much like, understanding how ultimately it's about love, it's about service, right? And so even from, I would say, people would think that it's like, because anyone who's known me from elementary, and I've known people from elementary, they know that I've been this kid since like forever. I was a book talk girl for my elementary school TV show. I was like the line leader. Like it was like, but it was my accident. You know how sometimes people just be like, I think we should just listen to her. I was just like, and even when those days I would try to resist that, I was just like, no, like, because for me, I just wanted to be cute and like, frolic like the other girls. So I thought like I didn't expect to kind of like lead, always be in the capacity. But when God calls you to kind of like, be a service, he gives you certain skill sets, he gives you certain talent, you realize like it's been ingrained that you are supposed to give that back. Like you are supposed to do that work in service. And yeah, a lot of the infrastructure that I learned was in my FIU days, starting when I was at the time, the SGA vice president at FIU. They wanted to have the Black Student Union become a council. And first they were going all this back about getting funding. And at the time, our BSU only had a combined budget from North Campus and South Campus, $500. And mind you, the gag is that at the FIU at the time, and I think even still to this day, they had the largest Black percentage from a non-HBCU. So they had the largest Black population from FAU, UF, FSU. But when I researched all those other schools that had like a council or they had a student club, it was like a laughable budget. And so for me, I was like, okay, we're going to figure out how to, instead of you having to come all the time asking the leadership for money, let's create a structure so that you can become a council and you guys can run your own operations. Because the only reason they started coming to me, because at the time I was the only Black person in leadership at my SGA. So for them, it was obvious to come to me and they're like, let's see, we can get some more funding. We're doing a project. But I was like, I'm a person about, I don't want to solve for today. I want to solve for tomorrow. So I want to be able to be very strategic and like, because I'm like, what if the next president, like, what if the next people in leadership is no one's Black? Like, what you gonna do then?
Yeah,
So,
FIU is Florida International University. What about the entire country?
exactly. So for me, I was just like, okay, let's create a plan. And so, yeah, those early days of like, from mobilizing, I did a whole presentation to the university administration. It's like when I look back, I was like, I don't know what kind of kid I was.
One that makes it happen.
Oh my gosh, my idea of fun was reading statutes and like looking up these bylaws and then like doing these gotcha, like, well, per these agreements, have FSU. I was just like, oh my God, the kind of kid I was. And
Sounds like you might have had an attorney you needed on your squad there.
Well, to that point, and I didn't do it in the introduction, but Kenasha has a JD. So when she talks about reading all these statutes and different things like that, she was actually doing that. And then, Kenasha, one of the things you said, though, in that was really about resources. And I know right now BRIC is through BPN is working with, I won't name the legislator because legislator rather in the state that we're working with to get funding for BRIC as more of a trade organization, like many others have been able to do successfully, whether it be the Latin Builders Association or other entities and organizations here in South Florida and throughout the state. But Chad, let me ask you, when you talk about resources, so you have a unique perspective, and don't let me get you into trouble with your book of business, but you have a unique perspective when you look across, M&T's lending platform. I think you were with another lender. I'll let you go into that a little bit further before. So you've been at some of the biggest shops in the United States, and you've been able to see who's getting funding, who has access to resources. So if you can just put a little color on that, and then we're going to come back to Kenasha too, because she also has an immigrant story background that I think is unique to South Florida. And we should talk about that. But Chad, just on this resource point and the things that you're seeing in the marketplace, I think you have a unique perspective. If you could just talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, no, Kareem. I mean, to put it bluntly, man, there are not a lot of people that look like us on this podcast that I do business with. I will say I do business with more than most others might because of my background, right? Being an African-American male and in the finance space. I mean, look, to give you perspective, I can remember going to one of the largest conferences in the country, and I went, this is a real estate conference. I won't name names, but this was years ago. This was maybe 2013 or 2014. It was in Orlando at one of the large conference hotels. And I just remember being in this conference room, and you go to a conference hotel and they have the partitions that they divide to make the room smaller, make it larger. We're talking about wide open, 1, 2, 3, 4 tables of food on this side, 1, 2, 3, 4 tables of food on that side, 2 bars in the back. This is a massive room. I walk into this room and I'm looking around and I'm like, man, there's maybe 4 or 5 other people that look like me, tops, including some of the wait staff. And, so when you, and listen, I will say this, when you transfer that to the client side of the business, right? It's something that we talk about, when we talk about generational wealth and we talk about this access to the resources and what are those resources, right? The education and know-how, having whether or not you learned at a large institution or, you work side by side with a developer like Integral, or, you had someone that was able to give you a little extra edge. And it's just not a lot. We've talked about it, and I mean, the percentages are definitely in the single digits. I would easily put it at, 3-4%. I mean, the business that we're in on the multifamily lending side, you're talking about over 150, 60, $70 billion a year that's getting put out in dollars for multifamily housing. And that's across, affordable housing and seniors housing and market rate housing and workforce housing and manufacturer housing. And there are not a lot of individuals who have the ability to sign the required, guarantees for these transactions, who have the amount of money that they need to have in the bank to meet certain covenants. And so, to tie it back, that's also a part of BRIC, right? Is to start building that legacy and working alongside BPN to do that. But the numbers are small but mighty, Kareem. I'll say that they're small but mighty, and they're growing.
Yeah, and I think from our business, we're obviously, for those who heard at the beginning, we're in the development space, and we specialize in housing affordability. But that doesn't mean that we're solely in affordable housing. We're in a lot of cases in market rate housing. We're actually finishing up something in Texas right now. I think it's well over 300 units. And so when you look at, I'll look at Florida, the territory that I'm representing for Integral. I mean, our budgets, are, sometimes 50, 60, $80 million. And you're looking at that spend on construction, the lowest will be that we probably ever will do here, in terms of multifamily housing is probably about $21 million of budget. And when you look at how that spend is going across 16, 18 divisions of construction, whether it be, concrete and shell, whether it be mechanical, electrical, plumbing, all of those divisions, if you will, of construction have companies behind them that are in this space trying to get business. And behind those companies are individuals that own the company. And so behind those individuals are families, children, needs, whether it's private school, whether it's, affording college, whether it's just, affording experiences that take you on vacations. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't, poor was never something that really, ran through my mind, but I certainly realized when I went to college how much, my parents gave me like, I'll never forget this story. They gave me like $100 on my Gator One card. So for all of those, Gator One card exists at the University of Florida. So I had my $100 and my mom had bought me all the stuff in my room. And anyway, I'm there and I go through my first week and my mom calls me, "How you doing, son?" And I said, "I'm doing good." I just couldn't bear to tell her that I had gone through that first $100 in the first 3 or 4 days, because I would have had to ask her, "Hey, Mom, I'm going to need like $500. That $100 is not good." But it was also rich in experiences while I was at Florida. So that really changed the outcome. So when you talk about real estate development, when you talk about all these folks behind the scenes that are doing it, it's really experiences that get you lined up. And so bringing it back to BRIC, I think one of the things that we talked about was, how do you create these rich experiences so people can organically be able to generate business and partner with developers like me, financial institutions like M&T, where Chad is at, and really thrive and take care of all those people in the background. But I think it all starts with experiences, because providing an opportunity where people can learn and grow and start to be exposed to new ideas and concepts gives them the notion that, hey, maybe I don't have to go to college, for example. Maybe I go into this trade, or maybe I learn how to do it hands-on from an employee standpoint. I work these jobs and then I start to see how the business side works. So with all of that as the backdrop, just talking about exposure experiences, Kenasha, can you just elaborate, or Chad, just talk about, and I know some of this stuff, so allow me to ask you the question, but if you guys could just kind of talk about really what programming and aspects of BRIC kind of speak to this exposure and experience piece.
Yeah, I think what I'm excited about is just being able to see so many different players in the commercial real estate profession. be able to network. When I think about our opening that we had did, like the amount of people who were in that room, we held it at Soho on South Beach, and the amount of people from every facet just excited. They're just like, being excited that they've never been around each other at this proximity, all of them together in so long. And the fact that just to be able to kind of just naturally, like, I think what BPN does effortlessly is like when we have people who are looking not only for community, but they're also want to make sure that we are attracting the right people in the room. And I think ultimately, like, the format of programming events are all the same. You got venue, maybe have a speaker, you have like certain refreshments. Like, the formats for the most part are the same. But I think what our secret sauce is that I make sure, like, I know how to find other servant leaders, right? So it's like when Chad will on into it, because people ask me all the time to do things for BPN. And I'm like, I'm bubbly, I'm sweet, but I say no. But it's just like when I meet other people who understand, like, servant leadership and understanding, like, but understanding also economic opportunity, because I try to balance that, right? So it's like, so because those people understand, like, inherently, that yes, people want to gather, but there's a time and place even for socializing. But there is a time and place where we're trying to do like impact, like strategic relationship building. And I think for us, it's like we're really good about attracting people who get that. And so when people see the caliber of people like Kareem are in the room, Chad's in the room, Evans, Tim, when they see that those Tamika, like, when they see those people are in the room, they automatically, it's like it already sends a signal like, oh, okay, these people are good people, but they're also gonna be doing good business. Like, their mindset is like focused on like how we're going to get deals, how we are going to create opportunity. And it's not just because they all know that you guys are busy. Like, so they're like, they want to make sure that, okay, they're gonna maximize my time. And so I think for me, it's just been better making sure always that the people who signal that, they're not time wasters. They're not here to like just to have fun. They're here because they want to create opportunities. They want to drive growth for their families, drive growth for their business. And ultimately, part of like BPN's core vision, mission is that we want to create an ecosystem of legacy builders. And it's people who are understanding that we're solving for today and tomorrow.
Well, Chad, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Now, I'm gonna support you with this too, because Kenasha, gave so many gems in that. But I won't ask you the same question, but the question I will pose to you is, what does BRIC look like in terms of success for you, maybe from a milestone standpoint? And I think oftentimes folks think because I launched BRIC, because it's ongoing, that something has to happen like tomorrow. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow in this magnificent, grandiose way, then there has not been a success. And I'm of the mind frame that you build slowly over time. And that's been my career, and I've appreciated it. So with that backdrop, giving you my opinion, kind of lay out maybe what you think the milestones are for BRIC and what you would consider success for BRIC in the future.
Absolutely, Kareem. Listen, I think what I will say is I'll go all the way to the end, and then I'll come back, like you said, and kind of start. So for me, what I envision for BRIC is that it becomes a household name, one in South Florida for sure, within the state. We'll love it to be nationally, but really and truly for it to be a platform based upon the name, right? The Black Real Estate Investment Council. To, like you said, Kenasha dropped a bunch of jewels, but I think one of the jewels she mentioned was very important, and that there's a time for gathering, but you want to put certain players in the room and certain people so that they're doing business and getting business done. And what does that business look like, right? I think it's different for every person. If someone says, hey, I want to come to BRIC because I need to make a career move, I want to make a change, I'm coming to BRIC to get the access to those people who can help facilitate my career move. Or I can get the information that I need to learn something where I can make a career move. Or if it's someone saying, hey, I've kind of got it down, I'm here, but I'm coming to BRIC because I've been building, 20, 30, 40 unit projects. but I want to do a 300 unit development. I know Integral's doing that. I want to get in the room with Kareem and start to build that relationship, with Kareem, and then like the last piece, like with the programming, right? The access, I want there to be a component where people are inspired. And so for me, in the end, it's essentially that one-stop shop that plays along the certain lines where people can go and have this access. But in the interim, right, like you said, you got to have those mini milestones. What I would envision and love is that if a handful of people, say 2 or 3 people within BRIC in the first year, that they meet, they create that bond and that network, they're able to teach each other. And really and truly, I hope that they get a deal done together. I hope that there are people in BRIC who are making connections and they're getting deals done and getting access to the things that maybe they didn't have before, they didn't know existed and was available to them, but that they're using the platform to enhance their socioeconomic mobility.
And Kenasha, I'm gonna let you respond too, because I know BPN has been around and has specific goals. But let me just go back to one thing Chad said when I changed my mind to get involved in BRIC. And so he described a room where he was out in, what you say, California, but anyway, he was out west in a
Orlando.
room.
That was in Orlando.
Well, it was in Orlando. It was in Florida. I'm sorry. So he described a room that was like, a football field long and had all these, service attendants and food stations and all of this and, all these number of people in the room. And that's what I walked into at the first BPN summit that I went to last year. And the headliner was Stephen A. Smith. And I couldn't believe, I was like, wait a second, I have BPN, Stephen A. Smith in this huge room. And I remember even from this year, somebody said on one of the, how you add the comments in the social media, and they said, wait a second, where are you? Because you can't be in South Florida with all those Black people in that bigger room. And so I just want to give the context of what I walked into. And I think I called you the next day and I said, Kenasha, I know you're busy, but okay, I'll join Chad and Evans and we'll go down this journey of BRIC. But anyway, I just had to
believe it. I was like, Kareem was like, serious, believe it. He was like, oh, okay, you're serious. No, but it's fair. Like, I understood his hesitation. There is so many people who mean well, but the action doesn't end up meeting the intent, right? So it's like the programming or like the people, and so but because I'm so passionate about it, I think one of the leadership skills that I always try to hone in even on my team members is just like, do not underestimate details. Do not underestimate like from the people that you got to reach out to make sure that they are there, how you create the panel, how you have the questions, because all of that is people digesting and they're saying like, oh, the way that you structured even the title of that session made me gravitate towards it, right? And that the type of people who were on the panel. And so I just feel like for us, it's like with Kareem, it was like because Chad and Evan was telling me, it's like, because even when we had the pre-meetings, like Kareem was like, I don't know. He was like, we got him to the pre-meetings. And I was just like, okay, we're warming him up. And I was just like, it's okay. This is going to seal it.
That's it. You know what, Kenasha, I will add to that point. And Kareem, I think it's important to call out when you have that unwavering confidence, right? And that ability to just push through that, that's why when I was talking to Evans and I was like, hey man, we got to get this little extra boost. We need a little help. Like we can't do it all. We got small kids and this and that. And I was like, hey, Kenasha's got this infrastructure. We got to figure out how we add value, and that's it. And so, to me, that's the embodiment of BRIC and BPN, right? Like it's meeting these professionals to try to embark on something. And Kareem, to your point, Evans and I, and like Kenasha mentioned, we had this WhatsApp group probably 8 years ago, right? Like I remember we had our first little event at Fort Lauderdale, and I want to say there was maybe 5 or 6 people there. But it was kind of the same 5 or 6 that kept coming, but it grew into what that inaugural event was. That's we walk into this room and you turn left, you turn right, from one end of the room to the other, to people being outside of the room. And that's how much time it takes. And so I think, Kareem, that's another point to your earlier question of what I hope that people get out of it, and the milestones is understanding that this stuff doesn't happen overnight, right? Like you didn't achieve the level of success that you have in, representing and running Florida for Integral, and Kenasha didn't get to the Hard Rock and get where she is with BPN and have multiple chapters across the country, right? Unless you would have did that presentation at FIU. So it's a part of the journey, and it's the stepping stones that I think are transferable as well too to other aspects of life and business.
100%. Kenasha, just going back to that milestone for BRIC, I know that not always are the goals of Chad, Kareem, and Evans exactly the same with BPN. Usually they are, but I know that you have a way of taking our thoughts and our vision and streamlining us, because we are all in different spaces and places, and you're herding cats quite a bit. But if you could just talk about what you see the vision for BRIC and any milestones as we go forward.
Yeah, no. For Chad mentioned, we're BPN. We're fortunate to be in multiple markets. So I definitely, right now we're launching BRIC in South Florida, but I see BRIC, growing at the same pace as BPN does as we open up markets, so that people understand that it's a sub council with that they can tap into. So not only do they get the benefits of being part of BPN and going to our networking experiences and our events, but then they're also having a group of people who are hyper focused on deal flow, deal making, and creating economic opportunity. So like when I picture BRIC, I'm a bit more visual. So I'm already thinking of like the big gala that they're gonna have, and like the rooms, like the rooms of people having like a phenomenal like keynote speaker just for, like we always talk about wanting the summit to still be intertwined, but I definitely see us growing to a point that even if it's so within the same conference, that there is a whole track just for our BRIC professionals, and they're having a dynamic keynote speaker as well that speaks to their journey, and that people are just inspired by like us coming together and just us being stronger in that capacity. So I definitely see BRIC being definitely the go-to resource in the commercial real estate space. I really want for our professionals, if they even start small, of like how to have 10 doors. Like they know that we are a resource to help them get 10 doors to 1,000 doors. And yeah, I would love to also, this is going to be something, I can't wait for BRIC to have its first billionaire. So it's like, I would be like, yeah, let's go all the way. Like have the BRIC billionaire club.
Hey, I want to be the first with you, Chad. Let's do it.
Agree.
That would be a fantastic, or one of the outcomes. It would be a fantastic outcome from BRIC. Certainly we have, and let me say this, this year you had Fawn Weaver, the founder of 𝗥𝗲𝗋 and several other spirits that don't have as much of a large name as 𝗥𝗲𝗋, but the story of, Jack Daniels, 𝗥𝗲𝗋, how she came about, creating that business, and then her passion around it. I'll save it for those who get a chance to watch her directly and hear how she thinks about the spirits business and her brand in particular. I just thought it was fantastic. But at the conference, one of the things that I noticed were people were coming from New York, your chapters from Chicago, Los Angeles, and people coming to South Florida to attend the BPN Summit that actually didn't live in South Florida. So this idea and the vision of how you want to grow BRIC alongside of that. And that's why it was important to me. And that was what I saw when I went to the first summit. I was like, oh my goodness. I think I called Chad. I said, Chad, we got to do it with BPN, man. We got to ride the infrastructure. Like we cannot recreate the wheel. But that kind of leads me to another thought that I had. And one of the reasons that I said that at the beginning too about, joining the effort of, establishing BRIC and moving it forward was I frankly told Chad, like, there's Reese, there's there's other things that are already here. And you know, frankly, I won't get into my opinion on all these different organizations, but Chad, let me ask you, why do you think that you didn't just call Reese and say, let's do it here, or any organization for that matter that was already existing around the space? Why did you feel BRIC needed to be something new? Because, you know, a lot of times there's nothing new under the sun, but sometimes it's just the energy, the people, and what you need to get something off the ground. So I don't know if you followed my question, but why BRIC? Why not join in with somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the big thing is, Kareem, you look at these other organizations, right? Like, one you mentioned, like Reese. I'm a member of Reese. I think it's a fantastic organization. Reese has a particular place, and I won't isolate Reese. I'll say even with some of the other groups, right? There's the rep groups, there's CURE, there's other, Black professional groups, right? So they have their specific place. Some want to be more of an advisory pack type group and kind of cater to the, higher end and more of the C-suite professionals. Some want to focus solely on the, networking aspect and have a few other pieces of it, but it's really about just trying to foster that community. There are others that may only be particular to a particular, industry or segment, right? And when I think about those, I think about like a NAOP or even a CCIM, and there's the Black CCIM, the Black Architects, group. It's very, very granular focus. One of the things that I just thought was lacking was that interconnectivity and that ability to discuss, but also to meet and to collaborate. And really the goal is, right, to figure out how to generate business. I think there are some groups that do that as well too. But again, when you're only operating in certain segments, you're only working with certain folks. And so, what you've seen, Kareem, as well too, within the real estate space, the syndication business has grown, right? And I think we still have a ways to go with it, even for like what I do on the agency side, right? With the larger agencies, Fannie and Freddie, they still struggle a little bit sometimes with the syndication piece and the emerging sponsors like we talked about. And that's okay, because there is a place and time for everything, right? So I see BRIC, and as its role grows into, working with the small business community, working with community banks. So like Kenasha said, it's that person who wants to get their first 10 doors. Then they've owned those 10 doors because they got it from the local community bank, right? And then they've owned it for 2 years. So now they want to step up and buy the 100-unit building. And now they do qualify from the Fannie Freddie. So that ability to have roadmap and some of the things that Kenasha and I have had discussions about down the road, and, creating repository where people can go get information and have this access to things that some of these other groups, I don't think they necessarily have it. And it's not the fact that they couldn't create it or couldn't do it, but it's just the way that they're going about, formulating the group. So I think that the differentiator is really how people are not just going to connect and have place and have community, but really how do they take the next step from that? Because at the end of the day, Kareem, going back to the first point, right? Like, our time is all our time. It's the one thing that you can't replace. And, people have families, and we can't buy any more of it. So you just want to figure out how to be efficient with your time and create those relationships. And I think that this will be a fantastic platform to do it. And again, thanks to Kenasha with the infrastructure that's been laid out. So we just, we got to continue to formulate it. And really, Kareem, what I kind of think of it is funny. One of my kids had a birthday recently, and grandpa got him a Rubik's Cube. Right. And I kind of think about this like the Rubik's Cube. You're kind of moving the pieces. We got, this side aligned and the colors all matched, but this side over here is, we still got to do some work and spin the cube. And it may mess up a few things on this side, but then we got to go back and get it to the point. And so, I think as we continue to kind of fine tune and do that, I think it's going to be something really special.
Agreed.
So I know we have a lot of programming this year, and so we also cover a lot of territories. So it's all of South Florida. So when people think of, we always use the word Miami, but right now I'm sitting in Miami Beach. So that's where our offices are located. but I got restaurants right out, side of me that are Pura Vida Miami, for example. And I'm like, wait, but you're in Miami Beach. And it says the same thing in Fort Lauderdale. So a lot of people think Miami, we're thinking a little bit broader than just the footprint of the city of Miami proper. Talk about like how you want to engage the whole region. I know we have a series of regional events. So maybe Kenasha, talk about how you've approached that to try to really create a call to action. And then maybe on the other side of that chat, talk about really just from a call of action, what are next steps? What does somebody need to do to get involved in BRIC? But Kenasha, I turn it over to you.
Yeah, programming wise, we were very strategic in understanding that location, location, location. They say that's everything in real estate, everything in especially in commercial real estate. So we wanted to be very strategic in understanding that we have Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County has 13 commissioners, 13 different focal points. And so we wanted to be very strategic about making sure that throughout our programming, we are going to host what we call like deal maker forums, where we bring economic development officers, CRA directors, everyone who kind of operates in helping projects come to life. And then we're also doing that for Broward County. So because people think, everyone calls it South Florida collectively, but I'm of the person, like, I know region lines. Like my time in government, especially under Dr. Ben Johnson Mandela school district, taught me so much about district lines and understanding how they overlap, how the territories, everything. But learning that also made me realize how important it is district lines follow dollars. A lot of why BRIC is going to be so impactful to a lot of people is that fact that we understand this. We are able to tell you, like, there's certain money in certain district lines that follow the lines, right? So figuring out if you're building a project here, you need to know not only the director, the economic officer, you need to know the city council person, the commissioner, you need to know, and that we're going to make sure that those people are in the room so that you can have an easier time of meeting those people, because it is a hard task in figuring out who are all the people that you need to know, even if you are building like between 10, like a 10 by 10 by area, right? And so we really wanted to make sure that we leverage the knowledge that we have so that people can understand that we are going to really operate at identifying where are the deals. And one of the reasons that we are operating in that way is understanding the region. So excited about us having the deal maker forums, having some partner events with different key corporate partners, whether it's like law firms, development officers, so we can have a wide range of networking mixers. And then, of course, integrating a lot of some of our thought leadership content within the summit. So having that track that we do in fall. And so, yeah, I'm excited to kind of see and this is just our pilot program. Ultimately, we're going to be releasing more virtual programming for especially and segmenting. I know, Chad, you mentioned earlier about like how different groups have like with their niche or focal point. I think what also makes BPN special is that we do leverage technology well, and the fact that we understand that, yes, we're all creating a cross industry network model, but we also are collecting enough information so that we can segment our audience in a way that they can collectively be in one room. But then we also understand, like, okay, this person isn't what we consider an emerging professional. That means like they're doing less than 50 doors, or they're doing a certain capital benchmark, right? And so programming needs to be looked differently for them so that we can give them a milestone that they can achieve. And so that's something that we're integrating even more deeply within BPN, even for our professionals, helping them understand as we're trying to get most of our people to become accredited investors, helping them understand, like, okay, this person is making in a credit investor, if you're an individual, is 300K. If you're a couple, it's 300K. And then, $1 million assets, not including your home. But so then with our professionals, we're like, okay, this person is shy of 6 figures. That means we need to give them programming to help them reach a certain milestone. And basically, this is kind of like the programming that we are also doing for BRIC, being very intentional about, yes, creating cross industry, but making sure that we also in how we, from our emails, from the way that we market, that we also provide segmentation so that and milestones that they can achieve.
And that has been, I think, key, data collection. And I think just that approach, understanding the opportunities where they are, and then bifurcating not just the opportunity set where the individual is, but the opportunity set by region. I thought that was really something that will be very impactful as we go forward and roll out all the different events and opportunities for members of BRIC. And I think it's just going to be really special. I tell you what, folks who, as we are joining on and the organization is getting larger and larger, those folks who are here at the ground level as a starter are going to really, really be happy that they got on board so early, because, when you're in the room with 10 versus in the room with 500, the opportunities are easier to snag on your line, so to speak. But Chad, with that, in terms of a call of action, what do you think, somebody approaching BRIC, what do they need to do?
Well, I mean, first I'm going to say to them, just get involved. Just get in, get involved. But I mean, listen, I really and truly, I think like any organization that you look to join, whether it's, Greek life, whether it's a membership group, I mean, anything, you should do your homework. You should do your research, right? Why do you want to be a part of this group? Who are the professionals? What does it have to offer? But I think also, too, you have to ask yourself, what do I have to offer to this group? Right? I think everyone should be coming and wanting to be engaged, because oftentimes I think what you have is there's this desensitized nature of, hey, I paid my fee, and it's just like any other service I got, Spotify, Netflix, whatever. I pay my fee and just give me videos, give me songs, or whatever it is. So if you're going to become a member, in order for you to get the most out of it, you got to be actively engaged. And what does that look like, right? Is that participating in calls? Is that joining groups? Is that, connecting with your other peers within the organization? For me, it's where and who are the motivated individuals who would like to, join this organization to really help its advancement, right? Because our mission is to empower you. Is to empower, Black folks who come in. And so we can't do that if you're engaged. If you just paid the membership and you're sitting at home reading emails and you're saying, oh, well, nobody put me in the room with those, 10 people you were talking about, Kareem Brantley. And, we're going to say, well, who did you reach out to? Who were you talking to? What did you want to do? What ideas did you share? We're not a monolithic, stationary group, right? This thing it's going to evolve and it's going to keep growing. And in order for it to provide the best service to the most people, they have to be actively engaged. And I think that's with anything. So I guess that would be my call. Be actively engaged.
100%. I think as I was listening to you, it reminded me, of various things I've read and quotes. And I remember, I may mess it up, but Maya Angelou said, nothing will work unless you do. And that's what really I heard in what you said. And it's something that I try to take to heart when I'm doing something. And oftentimes I'm just saying to myself, are you working hard enough to get the outcome that you wanted to have? And so hopefully folks who are joining BRIC, really hold that near and dear to make sure that it turns out to be that it's everything for them that they expected it to be, and BRIC can just flourish and do the things that we've all set out for it to do. So with that, I do want to do one thing before I get off this podcast, because we are in South Florida. And Kenasha, just your immigrant story, people in South Florida, it can be oftentimes that the immigrant story is told from the lens of a Cuban American perspective. And I grew up in a neighborhood where a lot of the folks in my neighborhood happened to be Haitian immigrants. And so what I saw from just growing up was this amazing collective of folks who were coming into a neighborhood. There was a language barrier. To your point about monolithic groups, at that time, African Americans in Miami were closer to a Mississippi white woman than they were, Haitian Americans, because there was, first of all, there was just a language and a different culture. But like all things in immigrant community, folks come to the United States and bring a lot of the culture, and it gets mixed into the soup. And I remember even going away to UF, and I would come home and I'd be like, man, I miss my Haitian culture. I miss these things about, even when I was away in Huntsville, Alabama, I was like, oh my God, I got to get back to Miami. But talk about your immigrant story real quick before we wrap up, because I did not want to miss that.
Yeah, no, I'm very. My parents are born and raised in Haiti. I was born here in America. I always contribute a lot of my Haitian background and my upbringing to the way that I see the world, as far as like, being very much a resilient people. Our history of just like, being the first country to fight for their freedom and successfully won. And I think for me that it instills this is like it's like I always like it, we're kind people, but we fight. And I always it's just like but it's like so, and that fighter experience is like I feel like we're still in it. So I love that so much of when I see VPN, because I think a lot of people, because of having a Haitian background, they probably would be like, why is not the Haitian Professionals Network? But for me, I think when I was creating the organization, I just love the fact that it was like almost like it was the perfect way to show that even though we are from different places in the world, we are from different places, socioeconomics, education, no matter the difference, and maybe that what we share is like skin color, that we're still going to find a way to show that together each achieves more. Like we're going to be able to kind of like push that message. And for me, that's why it was always important to kind of just be able to see a little bit of that from the Bahamian culture that is so deep in South Florida as part of its founding as well. Just the Jamaican culture that's really big, strong here, especially when we go up to Fort Lauderdale. Like they got that down. They got that down locked, right? So it's like I just love, and it just from and a big Nigerian population. When I go to a BPN event and not only see the sea of Black people, but also just see the sea of representation, and like the fact that we're brought together with a common understanding that we want more for our community, we want more for our families, and we really want to drive like a new narrative about what our culture and what our shared experiences mean. And so for me, like that's might be like the guardian me. Like we'll have another conversation about our legacy houses, but like but I feel like being able to kind of see that in the network, I think it has been the most powerful thing. And I think that it's brought some of the most amazing people who just understand like we are stronger together, and we have so much that we can learn from each other culturally. So like when Chad shares his southern stuff, like he'll say something, I'll be like, oh wow.
Learn something new every day.
Well, that is just fantastic. And I think in my career journey, as I've been going along, has really been, inspired by the educational experience for me and a gravitation toward capitalism in a way that I may have not understood it when I was younger, and then economic enterprise and opportunity through that. So I think you spoke to hit all those notes for me. And I think when it comes to, being in this community and watching immigrants, I've always said that I will not do anything that is just only African American at South Florida. You've heard me say that before. If it's not inclusive of the Haitian community, which is really driving a lot of new economics in South Florida, then I'm not doing it, because I don't want anything that's bifurcating folks. But as we wrap up, Chad, just any last words before we go?
No, Kareem. I mean, first and foremost, again, thank you to the Integral family for allowing us to have a space here to really kind of talk about BPN and talk about BRIC. I think just to your point, is just that we want to figure out how to support the collective here, right? I mean, this is Black real estate investment council. This is what it's about. We want to empower, we want to elevate, we want good people to come in and really just elevate those Black professionals and owners and anyone who's tangentially in the business, like you mentioned earlier, with just the resources and the access that they need And I think just something you said really hit home, Kareem, and just that, people want to do this for their families, right? They want to have the network and have the opportunity to provide for their family. So that's why we're here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let me just thank you guys personally. A heartfelt thank you to you for joining us on the Create the Village podcast. And I think really just sharing why we all came together to create BRIC. It's just been fantastic having you here. I've enjoyed it. I love talking to you guys. I could probably talk to you for another hour, but I don't think we have that much time. But anyway, thank you so much for spending a portion of your day with us, and I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for having us.
So Kareem, your conversation with Kenasha and Chad, strong, really strong, was in some respects very personal and same time very powerful a conversation. And there's something you all talked about, and it's come up in a couple of my other conversations recently, is that the things we don't talk about much in the development circles. We're always talking about the deal and how it pencils and all these different kinds of things, which are kind of obvious. And it's hard not to bring those things up when you're talking about a project. And then we talk about infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, we're thinking of grading and piping and, what's in the ground. But infrastructure, we know, is not just about bricks and pipes, right? It's also about people and networks and relationships and access and so on, which is a big part of why a lot of us are motivated to do this work, right?
That's right. And so as we sat down with those founders of BRIC, which is the Black Real Estate Investment Council, it was a very motivating experience for me because honestly, what stayed with me was that idea of infrastructure building and how it is so much of a relational asset and how we develop business, participate in capitalism, and transform that relationship into a physical delivery of assets on the other side, which again is this big participation in capitalism that I think is very important to folks who are looking to try to build a business, no matter what they look like on the other side. You can't really build a thriving development without first investing in that trust that comes from interpersonal relationships between people, institutions, and oftentimes between generations that are passing businesses down or sharing knowledge from the more experienced to the less experienced through that growth. So that really stuck with me after I participated.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking about what I was going to ask you next, and it was really going to be about what resonated most with you. But before we do that, you mentioned trust, and you said it 2 or 3 times. And there's no doubt that that trust piece is foundational, right?
I think it is. And when you think about, so for me, that trust piece is even something I learned as a child through my own experience, and then watching my parents raise my brother and, seeing through him, for example, how family members contributed in that, and his success and his development was a part of people wanting to invest in him, wanting to invest in me, wanting to invest in our family. And so it was a little bit surreal because that becomes the foundational aspect that I learned as a child. And then I just carried it into business. It has worked for me. And I think if we can get back to those, just think about simple models like that. We do this all the time. And somehow along the way, we may forget how we did it. But I think that these are things that we learn early on with the right infrastructure and family set. You have many more advantages. And some of that even comes from families that have already done that and earned a certain amount of net worth and that they can pass along. So I know I'm going into a little bit of a departure from the episode, but I think that's what it meant for me.
Well, no, and I wouldn't shy you away from that, because the reality is we have a little higher hill to climb, and thinking about how this translates into generational wealth or stuff you can pass on is particularly critical because we're in the first one or two generations of being able to even have that conversation. So I get what you're saying. So given all of that, what is it that resonated more for you in the exchange that the three of you had? And said another way, what did you walk away carrying? Like, what stuck with you as a result?
Yeah, I think for me, Egbert, I walked away with opportunity is not, opportunity and the ability to pursue opportunity is not an exclusive domain of any one particular group, any one segment of the population. As we were going through the episode, I remembered that Kenasha is born here in Florida, but she is, the first generation Floridian of immigrant parents from Haiti. And so just how far she has gone in one lifetime that is really on the very beginning of that lifetime, she's fairly young, setting up this big endeavor that she's, sought to do or sought out to do for not just herself, but for others, called the Black Professionals Network. I just thought that stuck with me because that opportunity, that's what capitalism is about. That's what, we pursue here in the United States. And I just was reminded of it, that she's just half a generation in the United States, and look at all the great things that she's doing and the opportunity that was provided to her. And then that opportunity not being exclusive to one group of people versus another was really what left an impression for me.
Yeah, I got that same thing as well. Obviously, there's an affinity there since I am a first generation immigrant, not first generation American, because I am the one who transported. So now I have kids that will be where she is. But I will say I got that, and I could tell the drive was there. What I heard in your conversation, and you said it again just a little while ago, was a collective push to redefine power. You kept saying it's not the exclusive domain of any one group. So it's not just who holds it, but how it's built, how it's shared, and who gets to shape the rules.
That's right. And so when you look at BRIC, for example, I think here's an organization that's launching in markets that are not primarily one ethnic makeup or race or anything like that. It's launching in areas where there's a need to promote and encourage commerce and opportunities amongst folks that are currently just underutilized. And so BRIC is doing that slow, necessary work of shifting power, not through titles or, but through community and building that, sharing power and the opportunity to just remove those lingering exclusivities that one may run into, especially when the opportunity set is defined by how much capital you can produce to get started.
So is that what to you sets BRIC apart? What makes it more than just another networking group with good intentions, and what's the deeper work they're doing?
Yeah, I think I'm a part of many organizations, probably a lot less than you are, but I think
probably still too many, right?
Probably still too many. Sometimes I look at that calendar and I'm wondering, what did you do here? Why did you do this? But I think that it is a little bit different than most other groups because its sole focus is not chasing development deals, not being a part of a unilateral club or a one interest club of, let's say, development. It's trying to unite different sectors that are led by folks that will be members of BRIC and figure out how to collaboratively work together, and then also how to generate net worth and growth. So there's no win for BRIC to go chase a RFP or a development deal. BRIC wins by associating people in that development deal together real time. And what I've seen thus far, the results, folks are actually doing it. And one of the challenges that I think Kenasha is working on now is how to make sure she documents that and quantifies that data so that she can show that it's working in a very material way.
Okay. I get that. And I get that with BRIC, and that all feels like the right kind of grounding. So let's go a little deeper and personal. Kenasha named a burden that many of us can relate to, right? Far too many Black professionals know this, and that is, it's the pressure to represent everyone, to carry the weight of the entire community in every room or into every room. And it's kind of exhausting. And you do know that if you do it well, it's going to be attributed to you, the individual. If you do something poorly or do something wrong, it's the entire community. That's how it gets interpreted, right?
And it really kind of cuts deeply. I am running Integral Florida, of course, from South Florida, not in our corporate office in Atlanta. And so so long success is here in South Florida is defined by assimilation, by how well you can kind of shrink yourself to fit into these spaces that weren't necessarily made for you. And I think I'm starting, as I continue to age and have more experience, I'm starting to realize that diversity brings so many benefits, just as assimilation does. And I look at it as an opportunity to put a deposit in the collection plate. And so through that assimilation, one should not lose themselves in the effort. And I think that all of us, or many of us, bring something to the table if we remember that, so that the whole can be better. And that's kind of how I look at that, and how I want to start making sure I show up in those spaces to address that concern.
Well, I love the way you said that. I'm actually going to steal it. I will give proper attribution to you. The idea of it being a deposit. Yeah, no, I love the way you, the metaphor you use there. And so the question then is, what responsibility do you believe we have to create those spaces that you describe, where people can show up as their full selves, not as imitators, stand-in symbols, but just as individuals with the freedom to just simply be who they are, do what they do, express themselves how they express themselves?
I think I have to use the experiences that have led me to the place that I currently sit. I think the job now is to kind of flip the script of thinking that you have to code switch, or that you have to be something different than who you are. We oftentimes are in those rooms looking around, like Chad said in the episode, that he was early on in his career, he went to an event and he was the only one in there. I think that is something that we all notice when we find ourselves in that situation, but I don't think we should put a lot of energy into it. I think we should be focused on, oh, I'm the only one in the room. Okay, well, next time I'm in this room, I'm going to bring somebody with me. And I think if we really are focused on that, it will give the space where folks feel comfortable being themselves, because they got a partner in the effort, and then they don't feel like they have to translate themselves just to be heard. And so that is something that I think we can do without a lot of effort. It's not a lot of thinking, and the results can be exponential.
And that's freeing. I assume that's a freeing feeling when you can do that. When you can.
It is. It is. And you get another benefit. You're helping somebody else along the way.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So there was also in the conversation a real charge, a sense that BRIC isn't just building connections, it's building momentum. In fact, it is best described as a movement, right? And that's the way I describe it. It feels like we're at the front end of a movement and not a networking arrangement. It's like, okay, yeah, so we're hanging around with each other and talking, but the truth is we don't need to just do that. We need to drive to some outcome, and that's what takes a network and makes it into a movement. And that's what this feels like, the early stages of that.
And it should feel like that. I think BRIC is the culmination of information that is now widely available and accessible at a, in many cases, earlier stage in most people's lifetime. And it can be more than just a table. It can be a platform. It's a place where Black professionals don't just get invited in, but they're actually shaping what the invited in or the place that they occupy looks like. It's both physical work and addressing the misconceptions of Blacks in business. I think that it's showing that Blacks in business have the same motivation as anyone else who was participating in the system. So I'm really excited. And again, the results are starting to show. And these are in markets where we're not talking about Blacks having a large percentage of the population. And so leveling that playing field, I think, is a awesome thing that I'm seeing BRIC do.
So Kareem, extrapolate a little bit from that. Look into the future. What do you hope to see in terms of where BRIC is headed? So what can it become if it can maintain its focus and the support from the community?
So during the episode, I actually asked Kenasha and Chad something similar to that about what they saw for the future of BRIC and, kind of why they got started with this endeavor. And I will just answer it for myself. I just hope that the organization continues to keep scaling without losing the core of what it is, that it stays rooted in its purpose, even as the network grows. Sometimes when you get large, you lose some focus, but I think it has the right leadership. And again, as I said earlier, it's not seeking a government contract or a development pursuit or an RFP pursuit. It's saying, we know these things exist out here. We want to match these opportunities up with people who are qualified candidates who are interested in pursuing this work. And I think that's working. And that's what I hope that it continues to do, because if that part is right, if BRIC gets that part right, it could be a game changer for the entire industry and just something that folks can look to even start in their own communities and continue to grow.
That's great. That's powerful. And so, Kareem, we'll get into the end, and I just want to do my own takeaway. BRIC is clearly proven that when you build a table for yourself, you're no longer waiting for a seat. You're actually not waiting for permission. You're choosing the menu, you're setting the tone, you're deciding who's going to eat, what they're going to eat. And that's what real agency looks like. So I appreciate what this means to a lot of people yet to get their seat at the table. So I want to thank you for your time, for steering such a conversation. It was rich indeed. And I have deep respect for Kenasha and Chad for helping us envision what true alignment and shared power can look like in this industry. So thank you very much for taking the time to hold that conversation.
Absolutely. And Egbert, always to you. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Next time on Create the Village.
The house changes for all kinds of reasons. That change kind of flows across the whole business like a wrecking ball. Hierarch actually just automates the flow of that change.
Create the Village is produced by Felicia Ann Rosennuha and Chantrell Brewer. Executive producer Rick White. It's edited by Brennan Robinson. Create the Village is a production of the Integral Group LLC, copyright 2025.